It's no secret that almost all of Disney's films have been adapted from various books, plays, and even theme park rides. Now, since Disney is a family company, some of these darker and less pleasant stories were given happier vibes and endings as not to scar little children for life, and today we're going to take a look at one such story, The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid was written by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen back in 1837 and has since then seen a number of adaptations, with the most popular being Disney's classic take of the story. If that name sounds familiar, then don't be surprised. Hans Christian Andersen is responsible for creating some of the most memorable tales ever written, such as Thumbelina, The Ugly Duckling, The Emperor's New Clothes, and The Snow Queen, a tale that was used as the inspiration for Frozen. Needless to say, he was a brilliant storyteller. So, just how much of Andersen's story did Disney change for their animated film? There are many similarities between the two works, but the ending for both couldn't be more different. Let's dive into the worlds of The Little Mermaid. The movie. One night, 16-year-old Ariel swims to the ocean's surface and sees a grand ship sailing in the waters. She gets closer as celebratory music only gets louder, and there she sees Prince Eric, a human man she falls in love with at first sight. Things take a turn for the worse rather quickly, and the ship is destroyed in a storm. Prince Eric almost drowns, but Ariel saves him and sings to him until he regains consciousness. The prince then vows to find the singing maiden and marry her. King Triton eventually finds out about this, and in a rage destroys all of Ariel's human possessions. This allows Ariel to easily be manipulated by Ursula, the Sea Witch. She tells Ariel that she can turn her human in exchange for Ariel giving up her voice. However, if Ariel can't receive the kiss of love from the prince within 3 days, then Ariel's soul will be trapped for all eternity in Ursula's collection. Ariel agrees despite this and is given a pair of legs. When it looks like Ariel is getting close to achieving her goal, Ursula disguises herself as the singing maiden that Eric is looking for, using Ariel's voice, in an attempt to foil her plans. Ariel exposes Ursula, but it's too late. The 3rd day is over and Ariel belongs to her now. Triton makes a deal to take his daughter's place to save her, and with a crown and trident in hand, Ursula becomes the ruler of the seas. That is, until Eric stabs and kills her with a ship. After the shriveled King Triton is returned to his mermaid form, he turns Ariel human and she marries Prince Eric, living happily ever after. The story. In Andersen's story, the Little Mermaid is never given a name. She is 10 years old and she has 5 older sisters instead of 6 like in the movie. Like the Disney adaptation, her father is the Sea King, and while she also has no mother in this story, she does, however, have a grandmother. The mermaid and her sisters are all born 1 year apart. In Andersen's story, it is explained that on her 15th birthday, a mermaid is allowed to swim to the surface and look at the world above. Each year, the Little Mermaid listened eagerly to the stories of her sisters, anticipating her own 15th birthday. All of the mermaid sisters were fascinated with trinkets and items they found from the wreckage of human vessels. The Little Mermaid, however, only cared for her red flowers and for a marble statue of a handsome boy that had fallen to the ocean floor. The Little Mermaid would constantly dream about life on the surface and how it would be. Unlike in the movie, traveling to the surface is never forbidden by the Sea King. Once a mermaid has reached the age of 15, they are able to go and come as they choose. The Little Mermaid has an established relationship with her grandmother, who tells her all about the human world and the way it works. Eventually, her 15th birthday came and the Little Mermaid traveled to the surface. Once there, she spotted a grand ship and could hear songs and celebration coming from on board. She approached the ship and listened to all of the music and cheers and spotted a handsome lad on the ship whose appearance captured her heart almost right away. He was a prince, and the mermaid couldn't keep her eyes off of him. However, a great storm soon thundered across the skies, and the perilous sea proved to be too much for the prince's ship, with the winds and waves knocking it over on its side. The mermaid swam with all her might and rescued the prince from drowning. She took him ashore and petted his head gently until she heard someone coming near. The prince was found and taken back to the castle, but it saddened the mermaid that he would never know what she did for him. The mermaid returned to her home and told her sisters about what happened. The sisters knew about the prince and his kingdom and took their little sister to show her the prince's home. After that, the Little Mermaid would always dream about life in the human world. Her grandmother goes on to tell her that mermaids live for sometimes 300 years and that upon their death they become sea foam. Humans, however, have a much shorter lifespan, except when a human dies, their soul lives on eternally and ascends to heaven. The mermaid asked her grandmother if mermaids could ever have souls, and she responds telling her granddaughter that only if she were to marry a human who loved her more so than his own parents and family, that a part of his soul would enter her and she would have a soul of her own. It's important to note that a mermaid not only wants to be with the prince, but would gladly give up all of her extended life just to have a soul. One night, when the underwater kingdom is having a ball, the little mermaid decides to go to the sea witch, hoping for a way to become human. The sea witch tells her that she is foolish and that it would only end in heartbreak for her, but the mermaid persists. The sea witch tells her that in exchange for her ability to speak, she could be human. However, every step she takes will feel like a knife through her legs, and if the prince doesn't marry her, then the morning after his wedding to someone else, the mermaid would die and become sea foam. The mermaid agrees, and the sea witch takes a knife and cuts the mermaid's tongue out. The prince finds the mermaid and takes her back to his castle where she's dressed richly. The prince and his parents are then entertained by, female slaves? Who put on a dance for the royal family and their mute guest. The mermaid starts to dance as well despite it causing her great pain, and she gains the prince's attention. The prince wanted her to remain with him always, and the mermaid would sleep by his door. They rode together through the woods, and she even climbed with him to the top of mountains, always being happy despite her tender feet starting to bleed. One night, the mermaid spotted her sisters in the water and beckoned for them to approach her. Once they recognized their human sister, they told her how much sorrow their family was in that she was gone. After that, her sisters would come every night to visit her, and one evening, the little mermaid even saw her grandmother, who hasn't come to the surface in a long time, and her father looking at her from the ocean surface. They outstretched their hands towards her longingly, wishing for her to return to them, but they didn't go near land. The prince loved the mermaid, but he loved her as he would a little child. He told her that she was dear to him, but that he was in love with the temple maiden that had found him on the beach after the shipwreckage. He'd only seen her twice, but he told the mermaid that she had almost driven the temple maiden from his mind. The mermaid is happy, thinking that she's close to winning over the prince's heart, but then the unexpected happens. The prince and the mermaid sail away to another kingdom after his parents force him to meet its princess. On their way there, he tells the mermaid that his parents could not force him to marry the princess, and that he would rather marry the mermaid who has been so loyal to him. The mermaid grows happier, but when they arrive at the town, her world and heart are shattered. The princess is the same girl from the temple that found him on the beach, and the prince has finally found the girl that rescued him. Even the mermaid acknowledged that she is the most beautiful thing she had ever laid eyes on. The prince married the princess. The mermaid even attended the wedding, walking behind the princess, helping her hold her train. That night, on the prince's ship, the little mermaid waited for the sun to rise and for her imminent death. It was then that she saw her sisters surface from the ocean depths with all of their beautiful hair cut short. They gave her a dagger, saying they all sacrificed their hair to the sea witch in exchange for a way to save their sister's life. The little mermaid would have to plunge it into the heart of the prince and let his blood drip over her feet. Then, she would be able to turn back into a mermaid and live out the rest of her life with her family in the ocean. The mermaid, holding the knife in her hand, walked into the prince's chambers where he and his new bride slept and couldn't muster the strength to kill him. After everything, she still loved him so much. She threw the dagger overboard, and as the sun started to rise, she threw herself into the ocean, her body turning into foam. However, something peculiar happened. The little mermaid started to rise up into the sky. Her body was destroyed, but she was now an ethereal being, and there were a lot of other ethereal beings around her. They explained to the mermaid that because of her struggle to achieve a soul, that she had become a daughter of the air. After 300 years of doing good deeds for mankind, a daughter of the air is rewarded with a soul and is given entry into the kingdom of heaven. However, for every good child they encounter, 1 year is taken off of their service, and for every bad child, 1 year is added on. Arguably the biggest change from the story to the film is the character of the Sea Witch. In Andersen's story, she doesn't have an ulterior motive. She even advises the mermaid not to pursue the prince. Disney was 100% behind the character of Ursula, as well as her motivations, and with the exception of the movie's ending, made the Disney version a hell of a lot darker than the source material, which is not something you can say too often. There are quite a few literary scholars that debate the ending of Andersen's original story as well. They were fine with the mermaid dying and becoming sea foam, But some felt like Andersen's inclusion of the Daughters of Air was just a cheap gimmick to manipulate children into behaving themselves, a tactic they felt was almost too transparent. I know there are some people that find a fault with the story of The Little Mermaid because they feel like it's about a girl that gives up everything to be with a man, but in my opinion that shouldn't be the takeaway from the story. In the Disney version, Ariel was obsessed with the human world way before she ever met Eric, and in the story, one of her main motivations was her desire to obtain a soul and live on in heaven after she died. So there you have it. Which version of The Little Mermaid do you prefer? Are you sticking with the Disney adaptation, or are you more a fan of Andersen's original work? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, stay tuned and stay awesome.